Very excited to welcome into our studio two presidents of two of Utah's major universities, President Randall of the University of Utah, President Reese of Brigham Young University. Thanks so much for being with us on Defending Ideas.
Thanks
Nic,
for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Great to be here.
It's great to have you both, to have this conversation together. I think especially in the context of what feels like for many of us who follow issues in the public square, sometimes a contentious time. And I think something that we believe very firmly here at Sutherland is the importance of our civic institutions as sort of anchoring forces in our communities and in our state to help give shape and form to some things that we do together as a people. And so with both of you, I want to start out the conversation talking about the fact that BYU and the U are in some ways slightly different organizations. Of course, a faith-based institution at BYU, President Reese, and a state kind of secular institution, for lack of a better term, President Randall. So first, I want to ask you both, why do you think it's valuable for a state like Utah to have institutions that might have in some ways some distinct roles, but they do serve a higher purpose? How do you envision that?
Well, for us, I think that the whole landscape of higher education is vitally important. We view that the contributors to that in its various forms all across the state are so important. I'm bullish on higher education and its role in society, what it can do for people. Not only its earning potential, but an educated society is a society that understands civic dialogue. They understand exactly what makes for successful societies, and so whether it be our mission, which really does lean into both our faith and our academic pursuits, or whether it be our friends at the University of Utah or all around the state, this idea of education and what it can do for people to improve their lives, to improve the society that they live in, I'm bullish on that.
Nick, thanks for having us here, and it's always great to be able to share the stage with President Shane Reese. I have incredible admiration for what he is able to do at Brigham Young University. I would submit that if you looked at our institutions, our missions are more similar than they actually are different. We certainly serve a different constituent, but there are so much that we share. Interestingly, I want to take you back in history. Our founders were the same people. A set of settlers that came to Utah, and they said, you know what, we want to make a better society, a society that absolutely thrives. And they had actually run an experiment before they started either of our institutions in the city of Nauvoo. It was called the University of the City of Nauvoo. It was only around for 2 years, but they were so enthralled with the notion that an educated public is what you needed to have a productive society. It was one of the early things that they did. The University of Utah was actually founded well before Utah became a state. Now, our mission is much like that of BYU. We care deeply about students and human capital. And while they focus on a set of values that are espoused by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we also focus on teaching students values of democracy, values of free speech, values of virtue that we think will make our society better. And then I think the other thing that both of our institutions try to do is we actually try to transmit that knowledge and discover new knowledge. In fact, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but both of our institutions do some remarkable things for this state's economy because of the things that are discovered by our faculty and students.
I want to ask you both, how would you describe your respective institutions' unique strengths? Kind of what does the U bring to the table? What does BYU bring to the table? For Utah, yes, but also for the nation, just because of that the power of education, as both of you alluded to. So what are some kind of unique things that you bring to the table? And you can't talk about the football teams. I know it's the season for that. You might say, that's a great rivalry. But institutionally, in terms of education and all the great things you talked about, what's unique about both your institutions?
Yeah, well, for us, I think our faith-based mission puts us in a fairly unique category. One that has a distinct emphasis not only on faith and development of as we would call disciples of Jesus Christ, but also that we have this strong commitment to our academic mission. President Kimball, at the occasion of our centennial celebration at BYU, our 100th year, gave a remarkable address that really outlined what could be for BYU if we were willing to be unique as an institution. And so we're really committed to that. What that does for us is it permits us to have people who walk out of the university and are committed to both of those aims, both their development as academics, their development as people who excel in their field of choice, but also people who can lean into their faith. And I think that becomes one of the things that makes us unique. It's interesting. We were looking at the data on those serving in the legislature, the United States legislature, and BYU ranks up there with most of the Ivy Leagues in terms of the number of people serving in these public service positions. It is a remarkable thing when someone leaves and they have a distinct connection to their faith and to their academic pursuits. And so we see that as something that puts us in a fairly unique category. But as Taylor pointed out, the virtues and values that apply to both of our institutions are shared in some important respects, and so we really view this as a complementary kind of arrangement here in the state of Utah, and we love the connections that we've got.
You know, I would say there are three things that really distinguish the University of Utah. The first is research, and that's with a capital R. So if you look at the research institutions in the public institutions in the state, they do 95% of the publicly funded research, federally funded research. If you add Brigham Young University, you get to 99%, and the U does about 2/3 of that. And so if you look at the basic discovery that we do, we are very much a research institution. The second thing is we're actually only one of 10 public universities that also has a healthcare system attached to it. And so we do millions of patient visits a year. We believe that is part of our mission to serve the state, is actually to very much emphasize the tertiary and quaternary care, the sophisticated cases that need to be done. And in fact, our healthcare system serves about 10% of the landmass of the United States as an academic medical center. And then I think the third thing that somewhat distinguishes us from Brigham Young University is that we are a pluralistic university. And we hope we're a university where religion does not hide in the shadows, given where we are, that it is actually brought to the forefront. But we certainly represent and a space where all religions are welcome.
Can I build on that for...
As do you, by the way.
Thank you.
So sorry. I didn't want that to come off as they're not welcome at Brigham Young University, but that is our unique role.
Yeah.
Well, it actually ties into what I was going to ask, is that I think there is a lot of debate in society these days about the role of faith, broadly speaking, in public life and whether it has a place in public life. We here at Sutherland Institute, of course, say unequivocally that it's an important aspect of American life. It is essential in so many ways, at the very least from the standpoint of religious freedom protections in law. We had in a past episode of Defending Ideas, Eboo Patel on the show from Interfaith America, and he very artfully described this idea of, we often talk about America as being a melting pot. His articulation of it is really, it's a potluck, that we all have something unique to add. And I want to ask both of you that through the lens of the role of faith in our public-facing institutions and public life, and how you think of that as an asset for our society through kind of your respective lenses with these different institutions.
What's been interesting for me about examining faith and the life of a student who expresses their faith at the University of Utah it has been to really view it through the lens of this potluck that Eboo Patel describes. We have these differences that if we bring them up and we allow people to talk about them, you quickly realize that there are strengths that you can build on. Almost every faith tradition, right, believes that faith can actually enhance intellectual inquiry. Almost every faith tradition believes in the golden rule. And when you think about conflict, and often conflict can arise on campuses, we lean into that, right? We lean into faith as being something that brings us all together. And so though on our campus we have individuals of different faiths, we try to focus on the commonalities and what can actually bring us together. And for us, we hope that faith and the practice of different faiths on our campus is something that brings unity to our campus.
Yeah, and I would just say that this is a great question. I think far too often we find ourselves in a place where we've been taught and framed this idea of separation of church and state, and we think that has to apply to every aspect of our existence. One of the three research initiatives that we sponsor institutionally at the university at BYU are family, the Constitution and the inspired Constitution, and then lastly, religion or faith and human flourishing, and what faith and human flourishing does for society. We view those as the three core institutions of society. And if you have a high-functioning, successful society, those three institutions have to be highly functioning. One of the things we found through some of the research that's been done at BYU, coming out of especially our Wheatley Institute, is the idea that when you allow for and cultivate a healthy sense of faith in the workplace, which is a place where there isn't real restrictions from being able to express your faith, that actually results in bottom line performance. We've also found some incredible research done recently by Pew talking about retention rates among various religions. And one of the things that is very notable there is, while we hear about the decline of faith among a younger generation, the group in this Pew study that had the least retention was the religious nuns. That we often talk about kind of the hemorrhaging that's happening in these various faith traditions, but the religious nuns are having the hardest time keeping their people, and ultimately, I think what that means is that I think there is a hungering for faith within the American public, and regardless of your faith tradition, this initiative for us really is independent of faith tradition. It's talking about what ways can people of faith be a benefit to society. And boy, the data and evidence just continues to pour in for that needing to be a part of what we do as a society and as a country.
Thanks for watching that clip of Defending Ideas. For the full conversation, click the link in the description and make sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your shows.